I never thought I would have to choose between justice and my own family. When I caught my younger brother Ethan sexually assaulting my fiancée Olivia in our home, something inside me snapped. I beat him so badly he needed hospitalization. My parents rushed to his defense, claiming Olivia had led him on and I had overreacted. They bailed him out and pressured us to drop charges. Instead, we cut contact and moved away. 4 years later, they are begging me to reconcile for a family anniversary, completely unaware that Ethan is serving life in prison for assaulting 6 other women. They still do not know the monster they raised and protected. If you are watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you are tuning in from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you believe family loyalty should never trump justice or the safety of innocent people. Stay with me as I share how I discovered the brother I grew up with was a predator, and why I will never regret choosing to protect my wife over preserving family illusions. Growing up in the Hawkins household meant understanding one unspoken rule above all others. Ethan was the golden child. From our earliest memories, my younger brother received the benefit of every doubt, the majority of our parents' attention and forgiveness for even his most concerning behaviors. 3 years younger than me, Ethan had our mother wrapped around his finger with his charming smile, and our father's unwavering support thanks to their shared love of sports. Our childhood home in suburban Michigan was comfortable, not lavish, but certainly privileged. Dad worked as a district manager for a national retail chain while Mom taught elementary school. They provided well for us materially, but the emotional landscape of our home was dangerously imbalanced. The first signs of trouble appeared early. When Ethan was 5, he deliberately broke a neighbor's window with a baseball bat during a tantrum. Mom called it expressing his feelings. At 7, he pushed a classmate down a slide hard enough to break her arm. Dad said boys will be boys. By 13, he was regularly taking my things without permission and destroying them if I complained. My parents told me to be the bigger person and set a good example as the older brother. I adapted by becoming the peacekeeper, the responsible one who tried to minimize conflicts and protect others from Ethan's outbursts. This role extended outside our home, where I found myself apologizing to friends, teachers, and neighbors for my brother's behavior. It was exhausting, but it became my identity, the steady counterweight to Ethan's chaos. Despite this dynamic, I still loved my brother and held out hope he would mature with age. There were moments of connection, late-night conversations about our futures, shared jokes that only siblings would understand, occasional glimpses of the person he could have been if held accountable. After high school, I attended the state university on an academic scholarship, studying nursing while working part-time to cover expenses. Ethan chose not to pursue college, instead drifting between jobs and living at home. His adult record began accumulating minor offenses: public intoxication, vandalism, disorderly conduct, all handled quietly with Dad's connections and checkbook. I met Olivia during my final clinical rotation at Detroit Memorial Hospital. She was a pediatric nurse with 3 years of experience, brilliant at calming anxious children and managing difficult parents with equal grace. Beyond her professional skills, she radiated a warmth and authenticity that drew me to her immediately. After weeks of nervous small talk in the break room, I finally asked her to coffee after our shift. Our relationship developed naturally, built on shared values and complementary personalities, where I could be reserved and analytical. Olivia was expressive and intuitive. We balanced each other perfectly. After 2 years of dating, including moving in together to our small apartment near the hospital, I proposed during a weekend trip to Mackinac Island. Her tearful yes was the happiest moment of my life. Introducing Olivia to my family revealed the fault lines I had tried to ignore. My parents were politely distant, asking surface-level questions without showing genuine interest in the woman I loved. Ethan's reaction was more disturbing. From their first meeting at a family dinner, he watched her with an intensity that made my skin crawl, interrupting her stories, finding reasons to touch her arm or shoulder, standing too close whenever I left the room. "Your brother makes me uncomfortable," Olivia admitted on the drive home. "The way he looks at me, it is like he is sizing me up." I assured her Ethan was harmless, despite his boundary issues, a reassurance that would haunt me later. I had spent so many years minimizing and excusing his behavior that I continued the pattern even when protecting someone I loved. Our engagement party at my parents' home 6 months before the planned wedding was tense from the start. Mom had invited extended family, but few of our friends, creating an environment where Olivia felt outnumbered and isolated. Dad made several comments about the hasty engagement despite our 2 years together. Ethan arrived already drunk loudly, telling childhood stories that painted me in an unflattering light, while repeatedly referring to Olivia as way too hot for my brother. When he cornered Olivia near the bathroom, slurring something in her ear that made her face drain of color, I decided we had seen enough. We left early despite my parents' protests, with Mom insisting we were overreacting and Dad suggesting Olivia was too sensitive for family gatherings. "What did he say to you?" I asked once we were in the car. Olivia stared out the window for a long moment before answering. "He said he always takes what he wants, and that I would figure that out soon enough." I should have recognized the threat for what it was. I should have cut contact, then protected Olivia, more fiercely understood that the patterns established in childhood had evolved into something far more dangerous. Instead, I dismissed it as drunk talk, assuring Olivia we would limit contact with my family after the wedding. 3 weeks later, I was scheduled for a night shift at the hospital covering for a colleague with a family emergency. Olivia had the evening off and planned to finalize some wedding details at home. I kissed her goodbye at 7 p.m., promising to bring breakfast when my shift ended at 7 a.m. I had no way of knowing that by midnight both our lives would be shattered forever, or that my brother's true nature would finally be revealed in the most horrific way possible. The emergency department was unusually quiet that night, allowing me to catch up on paperwork and prepare for the following day's shift. Around 11:30, my supervisor approached, mentioning that staffing had stabilized and offering me the chance to leave early if I wanted. Grateful for the unexpected break, I clocked out just before midnight and headed home, looking forward to surprising Olivia. Our apartment was in a modest complex, about 20 minutes from the hospital. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed a familiar car, my father's sedan, that Ethan frequently borrowed. A sense of unease crept over me. Ethan had no reason to be at our apartment, especially not at midnight, and he had never once visited us without an explicit invitation. I entered the building quietly, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. The hallway to our third-floor apartment was dimly lit, with most residents already asleep. As I approached our door, I heard sounds from inside a crash, followed by muffled voices, my heart racing. I used my key and pushed the door open. The scene that confronted me is burned into my memory with perfect, terrible clarity. Olivia was pinned against the living room wall, her face streaked with tears, clothing torn. Ethan had one hand over her mouth, the other gripping her wrist so tightly his knuckles were white. He spun toward the door at my entrance, his expression shifting from rage to surprise. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded, not releasing Olivia. "You are supposed to be working." What happened next occurred in a blur of pure instinct. I crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled him off Olivia with a strength I did not know I possessed. As she collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, Ethan stumbled backward, smirking as if this were some minor disagreement between brothers. "Relax, man. We were just having fun. She has been teasing me for months." Something in me broke at those words. The restraint I had practiced my entire life, the careful management of anger in the face of Ethan's provocations, disappeared completely. I struck him once, then, again and again. Each blow fueled by years of suppressed rage, by the violation of the woman I loved, by the betrayal so complete I could barely comprehend it. I do not remember Olivia calling the police. I do not remember her pulling me away from Ethan, who lay bloodied and semi-conscious on our living room floor. My next clear memory is of police officers entering the apartment, weapons drawn, ordering me to the ground with my hands behind my back. Ethan and I were both arrested that night, me for assault, him initially for trespassing, and later after Olivia's statement for attempted sexual assault. We were taken to different hospitals for treatment, Ethan, with significantly more serious injuries, before being processed at the county jail. I spent that night in a holding cell, replaying the scene in my mind, wondering if I could have done something different, if I had somehow failed Olivia by not recognizing the danger Ethan posed sooner. By morning, I was released without charges after Olivia and our neighbor, Mrs. Keller, who had heard the initial struggle, provided statements confirming I had intervened in an assault. Ethan, meanwhile, was released on bail within hours. My parents had arrived at the station before dawn, paid his bond, and secured a lawyer from my father's country club network. They did not attempt to contact me or check on Olivia's condition. The family response crystallized over the following days through a series of increasingly hostile phone calls and messages. My mother insisted Olivia must have invited Ethan over, that there must have been mixed signals. My father focused on the injuries I had inflicted, describing them in clinical detail, while expressing concern about potential permanent damage to your brother's face. Neither asked about Olivia's physical or emotional state. Extended family members began to weigh, in most accepting my parents' sanitized version of events, where Ethan had been viciously attacked after a misunderstanding. My Aunt Margaret suggested Olivia should dress more modestly if she did not want that kind of attention. My Uncle Paul advised that we handle this privately as a family, rather than involving the legal system. The pressure on Olivia intensified when my parents showed up at her workplace, cornering her in the hospital parking garage to explain how a criminal record would ruin Ethan's future. When that failed, they approached her parents in their small town, 3 hours away, presenting themselves as concerned about your daughter's role in this unfortunate situation. Thankfully, her family stood firmly behind her. Through it all, Olivia showed remarkable courage. Despite being traumatized by both the assault and its aftermath, she insisted on pressing charges and pursuing a restraining order against Ethan and my parents. She refused to be silenced or shamed, even as the family she had nearly joined closed ranks against her. 2 weeks after the assault, we made the decision to leave Michigan entirely. I secured an emergency transfer to a hospital in Colorado, where a nursing school classmate had connections. Olivia found a position at the same facility. We packed what mattered most, sold or donated the rest, and left without telling anyone in my family our destination. The night before our departure, I sent a single email to my parents breaking contact completely and making it clear that their choice to defend Ethan over supporting Olivia's safety and dignity meant I no longer considered them family. The last line read, "You have made your choice and I have made mine. Do not attempt to contact us again." As we drove west, crossing state lines with each passing hour, I felt both grief and relief intertwining. I was leaving behind everything familiar, every connection to my past, but also the toxic dynamics that had shaped and constrained me for too long. Beside me, Olivia slept fitfully, still jumping at sudden noises and unexpected movements. I made a silent promise to her and to myself that I would never again allow anyone to harm her, no matter what it cost me. What I did not know then was that the worst revelations about my brother were still to come, or that our departure was not an ending, but the beginning of a much longer journey toward justice. Colorado offered us the fresh start we desperately needed. We found a small apartment in Denver, began our new hospital positions, and slowly established routines that helped restore a sense of normalcy. Olivia started seeing a trauma therapist while I joined a support group for partners of assault survivors. We were healing gradually and imperfectly, but healing nonetheless. 6 months into our new life, the call came that would change everything again. Detective Lisa Morales from the Detroit Police Department contacted us, asking if we would be willing to discuss Ethan's case further. According to Detective Morales, after our departure, the investigation had continued, revealing disturbing new information. "We have reason to believe your brother may be connected to other assaults in the area," she explained carefully. A recent victim came forward with a very similar account, and certain details matched Miss Kennedy's experience too precisely to be coincidental. That initial conversation led to a series of video conferences with the detective and prosecutors in Michigan. We learned that following our move, Ethan had been arrested again for assaulting a woman outside a bar. This time, without my parents' knowledge, his DNA had been collected and entered into the system. What happened next shocked even the seasoned investigators. His DNA matched evidence from 5 unsolved sexual assault cases dating back 6 years, beginning when he was just 23. The victims shared similar physical characteristics to Olivia Petite, with dark hair, and the pattern of the attacks was consistent, escalating in violence over time. In each case, the investigation had stalled due to insufficient evidence or witnesses. We believe there may be more victims who never reported. Detective Morales told us during our 3rd video call. The pattern suggests a compulsive offender who became more confident with each assault. The revelation was devastating on multiple levels. Not only had my brother violated the woman I loved, but he had been systematically preying on women for years while my family enabled and protected him. Every excuse, every intervention, every boys will be boys dismissal had allowed him to continue harming others without consequence. Even more troubling was the realization that Olivia had likely been a specific, long-term target. Phone records showed Ethan had been driving past our apartment regularly for months before the assault. He had created fake social media accounts to follow Olivia online. The attack on her had been planned, not opportunistic, suggesting an obsession that had developed over time. Olivia and I agreed to cooperate fully with the expanded investigation. She provided additional details for her statement, while I shared context about Ethan's history of concerning behavior. The case against him strengthened as more evidence emerged, and additional victims were identified through renewed investigation of cold cases with similar characteristics. Throughout this process, my parents remained in denial. Detective Morales informed us they had hired an expensive criminal defense attorney for Ethan and were maintaining his complete innocence despite mounting evidence. They had gone so far as to approach several victims, offering money for them to recant their statements, actions that resulted in witness tampering charges being added to my father's record. 8 months after we left Michigan, we returned for the trial. The courthouse was imposing, a stone building in downtown Detroit that had seen generations of justice and injustice within its walls. Security was tight, with separate entrances for victims and the defendant's family to prevent confrontation. I saw my parents briefly in the hallway on the first day. They looked older. My father's confident posture diminished, my mother's carefully maintained appearance showing signs of neglect. They did not attempt to approach me, though my mother's gaze followed us until we entered the courtroom. The trial lasted 3 weeks. 6 victims, including Olivia, testified about their experiences. Medical experts presented evidence of injuries and DNA matches. Psychological experts explained the pattern of escalation typical in serial offenders. Ethan's defense attempted to portray the encounters as consensual, a strategy that collapsed under the weight of consistent testimony and physical evidence. Olivia's testimony was the most difficult day of the trial for both of us. She spoke with remarkable composure about what had happened that night, about the months of subtle boundary violations that preceded it, about the victim blaming she experienced afterward. When the defense attorney suggested she had invited Ethan's advances, she responded with quiet dignity, "No woman invites being terrorized in her own home." I testified about our family dynamics, about the pattern of excusing Ethan's behavior throughout our lives, about finding him attacking Olivia. The defense tried to paint my intervention as an overreaction born of jealousy, implying I had always resented my brother's natural charm with women. The prosecution countered with neighbor testimony confirming Olivia's distress calls before I arrived home. When the verdict came, it was decisive guilty on all counts. The sentencing followed 2 weeks later, life imprisonment without possibility of parole, due to the number and severity of the crimes, plus the evidence of premeditation and escalating violence that classified Ethan as a continuing threat to public safety. My parents did not attend the sentencing. According to Detective Morales, they had left the courthouse immediately after the verdict, refusing to speak with prosecutors or the press. Their absence spoke volumes about their continued inability to face the truth about their son. As we left Michigan for the second time, returning to the life we were building in Colorado, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, relief that justice had been served, grief for the brother I had once loved and lost long before this final separation, and lingering anger toward parents who had enabled harm through their blindness. What I did not expect was that 4 years later, they would re-enter our lives, as if none of it had happened, still clinging to illusions that could no longer be maintained. 4 years can change everything and nothing at all. In the time since the trial, Olivia and I had married in a small ceremony in the Colorado mountains, surrounded by new friends who had become chosen family. We bought our first home, a modest 3-bedroom house with a view of distant peaks from the back deck. Last year, we welcomed our daughter Lily, whose arrival healed something in both of us we had not realized was still broken. Professionally, we had thrived as well. Olivia had become the pediatric nursing supervisor at our hospital, while I had completed a nurse practitioner program and now worked in emergency medicine. We had built a good life, one filled with purpose and joy, despite its difficult foundations. Contact with my biological family had ceased entirely after the trial. I occasionally searched for news about them online, learning that my father had taken early retirement and they had downsized to a smaller house in the same community. Beyond these basic facts, I knew nothing of their lives, and they knew nothing of mine, until the email arrived. It came from my mother's account, but was clearly written by both parents. The subject line read, "Family Reunion Important Anniversary." Inside was an invitation to attend their 40th wedding anniversary celebration at their church community center, along with a lengthy paragraph about the importance of family reconciliation and moving forward together. "We have all made mistakes and said things we regret," the message read. "Now is the time to heal these wounds and become a family again. Your brother would want us to move forward in forgiveness." The email contained no acknowledgement of Ethan's crimes, no apology for their treatment of Olivia, not even recognition that they had defended and enabled a serial predator. It was as if they were inviting me to reconcile after a minor disagreement, not years of estrangement following violent crimes and a lifetime of dysfunction. Most shocking was the implication about Ethan. The wording "your brother would want us to move forward" suggested they were operating under the assumption he was deceased or otherwise permanently absent, not serving a life sentence for multiple sexual assaults. Either they had constructed an elaborate alternative narrative about his circumstances, or they genuinely believed I remained unaware of the final outcome of his case. I showed the email to Olivia, who read it with increasing disbelief. "They cannot be serious," she said finally. "After everything, they think a party invitation will make this all disappear." In the days that followed, more messages arrived from extended family members, clearly coordinated by my parents. Aunt Margaret wrote about family healing. Uncle Paul emphasized blood being thicker than water. My cousin Rachel, once close, before she sided with Ethan after the assault, sent a particularly tone-deaf note about how life is too short to hold grudges. None of them mentioned Ethan's crimes or current location. None acknowledged Olivia's trauma or my parents' enabling behavior. It was as if they collectively expected me to step back into a family narrative that bore no resemblance to reality. After careful consideration and discussions with our therapists, Olivia and I decided I would meet with my parents alone, not at their celebration, but at a neutral location with clear boundaries. Not for reconciliation, but for final clarity and closure. I suggested a coffee shop halfway between our current locations, a 6-hour drive that would require effort from both parties. They agreed immediately, seeming to interpret my willingness to meet as acceptance of their terms for reunion. The day of the meeting arrived cold, and overcast weather, matching the heaviness I felt as I made the journey. Olivia had offered to come, but we agreed it was better she stay home with Lily, protected from whatever dysfunction might unfold. My parents arrived together, looking older, but essentially unchanged. My mother's hair was fully gray now, my father thinner than I remembered. They embraced me before I could prevent it, my body stiffening at the unwelcome contact. We ordered coffee and took a corner table, the mundane act of arranging ourselves feeling surreal after so much time and trauma. "You look well," my mother began, studying my face with the intensity that had once been comforting but now felt invasive. "We have missed you terribly. Your father has not been the same since you left. We understand you needed time," my father added, his tone measured as if discussing a minor disagreement rather than years of estrangement. "But family must come first, especially now. Your brother would want us to be together again." The mention of Ethan provided the opening I needed. "Where exactly do you think Ethan is right now?" They exchanged glances before my mother answered carefully. "We know you are still angry about the fight you had. But Ethan has suffered too, being separated from the family this way." It became clear in that moment that they had constructed an alternate reality where Ethan was simply living elsewhere. Perhaps estranged like me, but essentially blameless. Either they were maintaining this fiction for appearances, or more disturbingly, they had convinced themselves it was true. Ethan is in Northern Michigan Correctional Facility, serving life without parole for sexually assaulting 6 women, including my wife. I said evenly, watching their expressions closely. He was convicted 4 years ago in a trial you attended every day until the verdict was read. My mother's face crumpled. That is not fair, Marcus. There were misunderstandings, and those girls were not innocent in what happened. Your brother is not a monster. My father's response was more calculated. The legal system makes mistakes. Those charges were exaggerated, and the evidence was circumstantial at best. With a better legal team, things would have gone differently. Their reactions confirmed what I had suspected. They had not accepted reality, but rather constructed an alternate version where Ethan was unjustly accused, where I had abandoned the family over a misunderstanding, where reconciliation could occur without acknowledgement or accountability. I need to be very clear, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. Ethan sexually assaulted multiple women over a period of years. He specifically targeted and planned his attack on Olivia. The evidence was not circumstantial, but included DNA matches, witness testimony, and documented patterns of behavior. He is exactly where he belongs, and he will remain there for the rest of his life. My mother began to cry while my father's expression hardened into the familiar mask of disappointment I had grown up with. You always were too sensitive, he said dismissively. If you had handled things differently that night, supported your brother, instead of attacking him, none of this would have happened. If I had arrived home any later that night, Olivia might be dead. I replied, the starkness of this truth silencing them momentarily. Ethan was escalating with each victim. The prosecutor believed he was evolving toward homicide. That is who you are defending, who you have always defended. I placed a folder on the table between us, containing printouts of the court transcripts, news articles about the case, and the final sentencing documents. This is the reality you have been avoiding. Read it or do not, but stop pretending things are different than they are. My mother pushed the folder away without opening it. We just want our family back, she said through tears. We are getting older. Your father has had heart problems. Is this really how you want things to end between us? You ended things when you chose to defend Ethan after he attacked Olivia, I said simply. You ended things when you tried to silence her, blame her, and pressure her to drop charges. You ended things every time you enabled his behavior throughout our lives, teaching him he could hurt others without consequences. So that is it. My father's voice had the dangerous quiet I remembered from childhood confrontations. You throw away your entire family over one incident. 6 women's lives were shattered. That is not one incident, I corrected him. And I have not thrown away family. I have a family, a wife who loves me, and a daughter I would do anything to protect. What I left behind was a dysfunctional system that protected abusers and punished victims. I stood, indicating the conversation was finished. I did not come here for reconciliation. I came to make absolutely clear that I will never expose my wife or daughter to people who defended and enabled a sexual predator. You made your choice years ago. I have made mine. My mother reached for my arm as I turned to leave. We have a right to meet our granddaughter, she insisted, desperation evident in her voice. No, I replied firmly. You have no rights to my child. You lost any claim to being grandparents when you chose to stand with someone who tried to destroy her mother. Lily will never know you, and that is the greatest protection I can give her. I left them sitting there, my mother openly weeping, my father stone-faced and rigid. As I drove away, I felt not the relief I had expected, but a profound sadness for what could never be for the parents who might have been worthy of knowing my child if they had made different choices for the brother who became someone unrecognizable. The 6-hour drive home gave me time to process the encounter, to release the last lingering hope that they might somehow transform into the parents I had needed. By the time I arrived home, I had achieved a clarity that had eluded me for years. Their inability to face reality was not my burden to bear. Their choices were their own, as mine were mine. Olivia was waiting on the porch when I pulled into our driveway, Lily sleeping against her shoulder in the early evening light. As I embraced them both, I knew with absolute certainty that I had chosen correctly, that protecting this family, my true family, was worth any cost. The next day, I blocked my parents' email addresses and phone numbers, closing the door on that chapter of my life with finality. The anniversary celebration would happen without me, and whatever story they told themselves or others about my absence was no longer my concern. Some families are born, others are chosen. Some bonds strengthen us, others break us. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference and having the courage to act accordingly, even when doing so comes at great personal cost. Have you ever had to choose between toxic family connections and your own well-being? What helped you make that difficult decision? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more accounts of choosing health over harmful family dynamics. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with family pressure to forgive the unforgivable, and remember that creating boundaries is not selfish but an act of self-preservation. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to protect yourself and those you love from harm, no matter where it originates.